In a little valley at the base of the Apuan Mountains in Versilia, Italy, at the confluence of the Sera and Vezza rivers, lies the town of Seravezza. Seravezza was established 500 years ago by Michelangelo when he was commissioned to spend 3 years discovering and establishing new marble quarries in the Apuan Mountains to the east and south of Carrara. And it is here, on the banks of one of the rivers, that artists Nicolas Bertoux and Cynthia have established their art center they call ARTCO. This huge facility used to be a marble slabbing factory, and Nicolas and Cynthia have painstakingly restored and renovated the structure to include a huge sculpting studio, offices, workshops, storage areas, apartments for visiting sculptors to stay in, a huge raw material storage yard, and a very unique exhibition gallery. The studio can handle several sculptors working with hand or pneumatic chisels at movable workstations. And there's a special dust extraction room where sculptors can use angle grinders to cut marble. I've come here to work for 2 months. I'm a stone sculptor based in Vancouver, Canada, and my epiphany to turn my artistic direction towards stone sculpture happened in Florence, Italy in 1980. And whenever I can, I like to return to my country of epiphany and work in a stone sculpting studio, rubbing shoulders with other international artists and being influenced by them and being rejuvenated and inspired by the rich culture of the area. To demonstrate some of the tools that I use to carve marble with, I'll be working on this abstract female torso that I'm carving from Carrara Bianco marble. And this is a sketch from my sketchbook, and I'm transposing it onto this wedge-shaped piece of marble that's about 3 feet square and a foot wide at the bottom of the wedge. I've already spent a few days roughing out the piece, and now I'm fine-tuning some of the forms. First I draw some lines as guides. And it's always good to keep your safety glasses clean. Joelle is making sure of that for me. I'm using a pneumatic hammer and chisel system, which takes the place of the traditional hammer and chisel that Michelangelo used to use before the invention of electricity and compressed air. Compressed air is fed through the red hose and goes into the green hammer, which I'm holding in my right hand. Inside the hammer is a vibrating piston that hits the chisel, which I'm holding in my left hand, hundreds of times a minute, and is a much faster system than the traditional Armstrong hammer and chisel method. Contrary to wood carving, the smaller the stone carving chisel tip, the larger the pieces of marble that come off with each hit. And here comes one at the camera in slow motion. I use these small tipped chisels in combination with this large air hammer to quickly change the shape of a sculpture. Now I'm using an air hammer that has a softer hit and a different chisel tip. This is a rake chisel, and you can see that the amount of stone that's being removed is a lot less. I can control the shape of the sculpture much better with this method. You can see how the rake chisel is changing the surface of the sculpture from the very rough texture that was left by the smaller chisel and the heavier air hammer to a much more controlled surface. When I'm satisfied with the form of the sculpture using this method, I'll move on to a grinder to smooth the surfaces, and then I'll use emery cloth to polish the sculpture to a fine finish. But that demonstration will have to wait for another video. Meantime, here I am in the dust room with an angle grinder cutting a marble, and it shows you just how much dust is created in using this method. I can't possibly bring my entire Canadian studio in my suitcase to Italy, so what I've done is brought enough tools to rough out these sculptures to this point, after which I will crate them and send them back to Vancouver and finish them in my studio there. I've brought my pneumatic hammer and chisels, which I've demonstrated in this video, and because my North American electrical tools will not work here in Europe, I've invested in a couple of angle grinders. I hope you've enjoyed this.